We're fine.
You barely got that thing warmed up.
Iron.
All right, we'll go ahead into the workshop. Everyone stand, Commissioner Dix, Wilson, Freer, Bob.
We come again, Father, thanking you, bless your name again. We love you, Father, for what you're doing and how you're taking care of us. We ask your blessings upon this county, this country, and this state. Thank you, Lord. Thank you for your goodness and mercy again. Help us, and help us some more. These blessings and all of the things we ask right now. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everyone to this workshop. It's Tuesday, July 29th at 5:42. Have our conference line set up. Number there is 1917-900-1022. Access code 32347#. This is not a toll-free number, and you may be subject to long-distance charges according to your long-distance plan. When the chairperson opens the meeting for public comment, please follow the below instructions. If you wish to speak, please dial *5. The moderator will unmute your line when it's your turn to speak and notify you by announcing the last 4 digits of your telephone number. Please announce your name and address. You'll be allowed to speak for 3 minutes. Any person wishing to address the board regarding an agenda item will be given 3 minutes for comment. A commenter may only speak 1 time for each agenda item. This is a workshop, so there's no action to be taken, so we'll move on to item 3. Mr. Andy Jackson to discuss the infrastructure capacity.
Well, Commissioners, thank you for giving me some time tonight on this. I want to share some information with you that I have not had the privilege to share before. And this is the kind of industries that we're seeing that have inquired in our property. Now, y'all well know that, could you pass those around? As you well know, the year before, it's been before Idalia hit, we were approached by Duke Energy to be able to enroll in their site readiness project, which was a bit of an item because if you've ever done one of those things, they go through every little question it is that they could possibly think of if somebody came to you and wanted to build an industry or manufacturing on your site, so that you'd be ready to answer whatever question it is that they might have. Well, we were 9 months into that project, and then Idalia hit, and the mill closed. And with all that economic news, then we had the second large meetings over the project with Duke Energy and some of the site engineers, and also the city of Perry and anybody else that was interested in bringing a job right after a day to show up. 2 of those folks that showed up was Jeff Hendry and Diane Schultz from the North Florida Economic Development Partnership. And they have been tied together with us pretty much since that time and trying to help out. Now, I'll summarize a little bit. Since that time, we have submitted roughly 18 leads for that property. And then we also have quite a few other leads that were available that we haven't submitted to, they were just inquiries. So those are the kind of industries that you're seeing on that sheet that roughly tells us what the interests are in Taylor County, okay? Now, since every one of them comes in there with another piece of information, wanting more utilities and different kinds of utilities. And it's 2, is there 3 there? Yeah, they want different kind of utilities. And here's some things that we've discovered. We have plenty of energy available in this county. Florida Gas Transmission has told us they've run up to a 10-inch gas line enough to power 500 megawatts to build a power plant in here. And they do it on their dime if they have contracts signed with somebody. Florida Gas Commerce said the same thing. They put in a 6-inch line, and that's enough to take care of most everybody that has needed energy. The other thing we found is that we had one of these data centers wanted to have dark fiber. Well, it turns out that there's a fiber optic network runs right through the city of Perry, about a quarter mile from my property. And it ties McDill Air Force Base and Eglin Air Force Base together. It was put in by the DOD years ago. And it has available capacity. The other thing we found is that, when I started out with Duke Energy, they told me I had 3 megawatts available on my site. I said, what can you do with 3 megawatts? Well, now they're telling me I've got up to 25 megawatts available. You just keep asking the question, you get a better answer each time. Not only that, I've got multiple feeders available. Well, we had one, the next one they want's water. And it turns out we've got about 800,000 gallons a day of water capacity available from the city. Where's John? Is he in here? Of course, y'all all know John, our city manager. John, can you tell us a little bit about water capability and wastewater capability?
Water we have, it's up to 5 million gallons a day, but you really can't pull that hard on our water wells. So more like 2.5 million gallons a day. We use about 1.2. So there is some water capacity for industry to come in. On the wastewater side, we're permitted for 1.25 million gallons a day. On a heavy rain event, after a hurricane or whatnot, we're up to 3 million gallons a day. So we're way over our capacity, especially during rain. On a normal dry day, we're at 600,000-700,000 gallons per day. So you do have about 400,000 to 500,000 gallons per day capacity. Super Puff, for example, they're sending us about 225,000 gallons a day. So one more Super Puff would just ruin us if it was on city wastewater. Out there in the mill, you got 50 million gallons. That's the city of Tallahassee or bigger. They probably don't have 50 million gallons a day capacity.
Yeah, so, there's, what it's alluding to, there's a gem we've got available in the county in terms of water and wastewater capacity. We know that the mill at one time pumped 50 million gallons a day out of those wells. Now the latest permit is they're somewhere around 35, 36. That's all in your environmental reports from Chet Thompson, in the report that you guys did last year. The other part of it is that wastewater plant, of course, has got to be able to get rid of that much. And I was talking to George Overslake the other day, and he said that actually that wastewater plant can do up to 70 million gallons based upon per day, based upon if you get a storm event. So it's well designed. The trick is you got to have some place to put that wastewater after it's been treated. I.e., that's how we got into the river business. And now we got out of that and we've got a pipeline to the Gulf. Jeff, Diane, can y'all give us a little insight into what it takes really to build wastewater capacity in a community and what this is all about?
My voice does not carry very well, but basically, it takes years and years to get the permit in place to do engineering, so you know what's got to be built to satisfy the needs and have excess capacity for future growth of the community itself, or perhaps if another industry is going to come in. And there's a great deal to the permitting alone, because you have to do all kinds of studies, you have to work with DEP, the Water Management District, and what's so beautiful about there being a water and a wastewater facility out there at the LGP plant is it's there, it's been built. And you don't just want to let an asset like that just deteriorate or go away. There are requirements even now for GP to maintain certain flows through that transmission line, or they will lose their permit. And to start over would just be a nightmare. It just takes so long. I've worked closely with Swanee County, and there was some money we found, 9.6 million. We got that grant for them. There were also, I think, 3 years in a row, they got a legislative appropriation for anywhere from 2 to 3 million, just trying to cobble together the funding to do it. The county themselves purchased the land, so they had spray fields. Now, in your situation, I don't think you're dealing with spray fields. You would be pumping it, the affluent, through that transmission line. And the whole principle of what we're trying to accomplish here is not to let that asset just slip away from the county and the city of Perry. Because if it does, starting over, it'll be 10 years before you have a wastewater treatment facility and a new water treatment facility. That's basically so important. It's such an asset to trying to get industry back in here. I've had discussions with GP. They are interested. They have not yet given us a price. They're supposed to by the end of the month, so we only have another day. But I said, you don't have to be exact. If you'll even give us a ballpark, so we need to know a ballpark price of what it would cost. I've had conversations with DEP, and Andy has had conversations with the Water Management District. We have a lot of background and information, but bottom line, it comes down to whether or not the county and city are interested in trying to acquire that so that it is kept in place and can serve your community and have some capacity, as well as also bring new industry in to create jobs. Because I'd be singing to the choir if I tried to make a big point of industry loss, of the jobs that have been lost here. And the only thing we can do, and we have a lot of good leads, and like I tell Andy, you're another day closer, because every time you get a lead and work it, he's learning more about his property. He's got good partners with Duke Energy. He has good relationships with so many of the state agencies, and they're listening. We do have their attention. Florida Commerce is interested in what we're trying to accomplish. And DEP they were just blown away. They said, well, we can even look at the regional utility. Well, that brings on a whole nother big ballgame, but we're just right now focused on trying to get that easement, which basically lends itself to controlling that easement, which can lead GP to wanting to work with us more.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Do everyone know that Diane, what group are you with? North Florida?
North Florida Economic Development Partnership, and it is actually the organization that manages the rural area of opportunity. There's 14 counties here in North Central Florida, excuse me. And it is a designation by executive order of the governor. It was first done in 2003. Every 5 years, we have to go back and go through the same process and make our case that there is still a lot of distress in our rural counties. And for that reason, we have continually been able to get that designation. Their designation may not seem like much, but it allows us to get a $250,000 grant from Florida Commerce, which we use to market the area. Y'all need to really go look at our website, because we have a first-rate website. It has won the state award for the best website this year, because we recently had enhanced it. We also do a lot of scholarships, because a lot of times communities don't have the money. They don't know how much it's gonna cost, and they know that their new commissioners may want to go, but, so they don't budget for it. And we spent probably $40,000 last year on scholarships for our communities throughout those 14 counties. And the other thing is, we also do a lot of educational kind of things when it comes to our meetings, which are quarterly meetings. Most people are just amazed. And when Jeff first took over as a trial sort of thing, I think he did it for 4 months. At that time, I was still in the governor's office, but that's how I came to know Jeff, because it had never really gotten legs under it. And there were only maybe 6 people at the quarterly meeting then, and now we have usually 100 plus. It may be 100, 115, 120. And he preaches, and I do say there's a lot of merit to it. You have to find value if you're gonna go to a meeting. If you're just going to another meeting, that's no fun. You've got other things you could probably spend your time doing. But when you learn something, and you make connections with the other counties, and you network and find out how they've done things, it really pays off. We actually both work for Florida State University, but through our Office of the Institute of Government at FSU, we actually contract with those 14 counties on an annual basis. So there's the connection. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to a lot of folks.
Great answer, great answer. Okay, well, having heard all that, let's get back down to why it's important that we do something about the pipeline. 2 things. One, or many things. One thing is that if we're interested in having a large employment manufacturer come in here, we've got one on the hook right now. Their problem is they need more water and they need more wastewater. In our proposal that we presented to them, we said, y'all can either build one for 40 to 50 million dollars, and we'll figure out where you can do a spray field, because that's going to be additional cost, but we'll figure it out. Or we can negotiate with Georgia Pacific for the capacity that's already in the county. As of now, we're still in the running, and this would be thousands of jobs across North Florida.
Particular, how many for Taylor County?
1,800 in Taylor County. The rest of them go over to Lake City. We've already worked in partnership with them on submitting this RFI. So there you go. The reason we couldn't go for all of it, we just didn't have the infrastructure capacity to handle that many jobs and that much, everything that they want, okay? So we did a little research about the state of what's going on. I went back to the report that was done last year and submitted to the county. And found out several things that you guys probably already know. There's a minimum drawdown they have to do with those water wells out at GP. Talking to the Swanee River Water Management District, they said, the report says 9 million gallons a day. That's to keep the contamination from going outside the property lines. Swanee River Water Management says, we think they have cut back on the amount of water that they're pumping there. We don't know for sure. They were supposed to submit their reports in July for the last 6 months. So we'll find out then. But we think it's more like 3 to 4 million that they're actually pumping now. And what they're trying to do is figure out empirically what's the least amount of water that they need to pump to keep that contamination from leaving the property line. You pump 3 to 4 million gallons a day, you got to put it somewhere. They're also taking down a mill and decontaminating the equipment that's in that mill. Got to wash it down. Got to put that water somewhere. They also have storms. Once it storms, you got to put that water somewhere. So there is a need for them to continue to use that pipeline or an alternative. And the last report I saw from Chet Tompkins is that they had applied for permits to start dumping in the river again at the bridge. We don't know if DEP's gonna let them do that or not. But from the discussions that we've had with Georgia Pacific, they are afraid that they're gonna have to tear that pipeline out of the ground. And we just can't see that asset disappear with that much capacity. We need to be back dumping in the river or having a huge spray field or some other issue to try to take any kind of an industrial concern to come there. Now, talking to Bob Kate last week and reviewing this project with him, what was going on, he says, listen, he says, I can check all the boxes that people coming in here asking for industry, but when it comes down to wastewater, I don't have an answer. He says, even the city of Perry property across the street from the mill has no wastewater capability. So that 50 acres is limited on what you can do with it. All right, how do you do this? Well, if you go back and look at the May 14th newspaper and read through it, it pretty well describes what the beef is between Four Rivers and Georgia Pacific. And of course, it ended up in federal court since Georgia Pacific is an out-of-state corporation. And it pretty well says it pretty well in there that they're not putting pump effluent out anymore, so therefore they've lost their easement. So they have been asked many times to stop putting water down that pipeline because they're in violation of that easement clause. There's a couple of ways that this could be stopped. One is since it's in public interest, the county can become party of that federal lawsuit and ask for, hey, don't give an injunction, just don't make them take the daggone pipeline up, quit using it. But the simplest way and the most straightforward way is for the county to use eminent domain to seize the easement for that pipeline. I know I'm a landowner myself, I don't like the idea of eminent domain, but in the public interest here, look what it is that we've got to lose. If we don't do anything, we're setting ourselves up to where we're not on those top employers that are hitting on that list. We're down to the bottom employers, the 50, the 100, if we get lucky, 300 jobs, incrementally done, okay? If we have the wastewater capacity, you have the potential of hitting a home run. And by the way, there's precedent. That's why I've included a discussion on making the Finn Holloway an industrial river. It was done in 1947 because industry was lagging here in this town. And quite frankly, the Florida legislature approved it unanimously. And they did it as an incentive to bring in a pulp mill. And it took 6 or 7 years for Procter & Gamble to actually catch interest and survey the land and actually buy it and put in a pulp mill there. So even if you have the assets in place, these things take time. So what we're missing here, if we don't take action, we don't have to, but if you don't take action and basically try to secure those assets, we're missing a generational opportunity here for the region and for the town and for the county. So that's my proposal is that, Mr. Bishop, do you have anything to comment about eminent domain or how that works or anything about it?
Yes, I do have a couple of comments to make
All right.
about eminent domain. That's what happens in an eminent domain. You call it condemnation through the court. And what happens is, the first thing you do is, if you file a condemnation suit, is you ask the court for what they call a taking, to take the particular piece of property that you're attempting to gain and have it owned by the county. And And you have to prove to the judge in an eminent domain, in a condemnation, you have to prove that there is a public use that, and a public use and also for lack of a better term, a necessity to do this such that you're able to take the property. Because in America, taking property from private is not favored. But if you do that, and you have a hearing before the judge, and of course the defendant in this case could say, no, there's not a public use and not a necessity for this, and then the judge determines whether in fact there is one. And then hypothetically, if the judge says, yes, there is, that you've proved that, then he goes to the next step and orders what they call a notice of taking. And that notice of taking, you take the property, but then what you have to do is you have to hire appraisers to determine what the fair market value is of that property that you're taking, and it has to be deposited in the clerk's registry of the clerk to pay that defendant. That's not the end of it, though, and the defendant can draw down from that fund. But then the defendant has the right to demand a 12-person jury to determine what the fair market value of the property is. And they are entitled to have an attorney, and they're also entitled to have appraisers. So you have the battle of the appraisers. They come in and say, you know, I've looked at this, I've looked at that, and so forth. And the jury comes back with a determination of what they think is the fair market value of that. And if it's more than what was deposited, then you have to pay that. Plus, in takings, in condemnation, the plaintiff or the condemner, which would be the county, has to pay the attorney's fees and the cost of the defendant that owns the property. So you not only have to pay an attorney to bring the lawsuit and represent the county, but you got to pay the other side. Of course, if you get a verdict, then of course the defendant could appeal, or the county could appeal, hopefully that you don't. So it's a process, and it has to go through court. An example of a condemnation that I was involved in when I was a very young lawyer, believe it or not, at one time I was a young lawyer. We condemned some property to widen the alternate US 27, I call it the Mayo Road. And we ended up about, if I remember, there was about 11 landowners or 12 owners that would not settle with us. And so the jury came back and gave an amount on each parcel, and I think the state helped us pay that money, and that's why the road is widened. So it's now you can imagine what the defendants, they might bring in some Philadelphia lawyers to face us, right?
Yes, sir.
And they're probably from Mississippi, Philadelphia, Mississippi, right? Yeah. Now, I'm teasing about that, but they would bring in some very high-profile lawyers, probably. I would assume, but we all put on our pants the same way, or our skirts. There are lady lawyers that do this too. Does that answer your question?
Oh, very well, very well. And by the way, Four Rivers is a Florida corporation.
That is, and that's important, because if in fact we being you being the county determine that you want to do this, then I would think there would be two, parties, county and Four Rivers, right? And so it would be in Florida, in Taylor County, because there wouldn't be a diversity of citizenship, because if you're, suing out of, like I'd asked you when we talked a little bit, I said, are they incorporated in Rhode Island? You know, we all hear about people being incorporated in Rhode Island. I think we can keep it out of federal court, and it could be, I think, now, y'all, I think it would be, right here in, River City in Taylor County. Do you understand what I'm saying? When I say I think, I'm not positive of what would happen on that.
All you attorneys.
Mr. Chairperson, Conrad, can I ask you a quick question? So would GPs be a party to this potential taking? Because GP owns the pipeline, Four Rivers owns the land.
Yeah,
So, right,
so we may be in federal court.
But the proposal is just the easement, not the land, just the easement.
Well, that would be a question that would need to be answered, with some research.
well, Mr. Andy, I'm sorry, can I ask, help me understand. So if the proposed taking was just for the easement, if GP did not wish to cooperate, do they have to
No,
let
maybe
us use the
maybe,
pipeline?
no, maybe they'll get the permit to dump back into the river. You never know. It's a state agency. They could say, yeah, you guys can start dumping in the river again. There's probably a lot of pushback on being able to do that.
Right.
You know,
Well, and I think, does it not depend on the characteristics of the effluent?
it does. And, not only that, but just the whole perception of dumping anything back in the river
No, I
after all
understand.
this years of cleaning it up. But it would make for an interesting permit process. Yeah. One thing I would ask, Jeff, could you help us out a little bit about the economic benefit of having this, asset in our,
Andy, there would actually be benefits to GP if the county did become the owner of the easement.
oh, absolutely. They wouldn't have the suit that they've got going on, the federal suit would vaporize. And it reads a sure end to what the whole deal is. Secondly, if the county has possession of the easement, you now have control of the easement. And what happens with that wastewater plant? And thus, what happens with that property? Instead of letting GP control things, or Four Rivers control things, Taylor County controls things. Jeff, would you like to speak?
I do have, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
But
Those are good
we cannot force GP to do really anything with their wastewater treatment plant or the pipeline itself.
No, but they gotta have that wastewater, they gotta have that pipeline, and they gotta have that wastewater capacity, because they gotta keep pumping for contamination.
Right.
That's the
Or they
protection.
should be pumping for a certain amount. to
Right,
avoid
they've
the
got
contamination.
several million gallons a day has to come out of that ground to keep contamination from going.
Okay.
So that's the key. They gotta keep pumping, they gotta put it somewhere, and that's why, Four Rivers filed suit on them. I suspect they're just after a big settlement out of it, but who knows? That's between two billionaires. You know, what can I say? Jeff?
Yeah, I'll just comment on just the process of county attorney. It sounds very laborious, and it is, and it can be a very contentious process. But at the end of the day, I'm just gonna say, I can't imagine that it's not at least worth looking at as a possibility, given the current situation that y'all have had with GP since they closed, and something to consider looking at. Maybe you get, counsel or consultants and things that share with you that this probably is not gonna move forward, or maybe you guys have a great argument to make. That's just something that you only get as you start looking at it. On the economic impacts part of it, as Diane said, we
we work with 14 counties in our region. One of the values y'all have, and Andy outlined it very well, is, a lot of our communities struggle with energy, okay? That's not an issue that you guys are dealing with. I mean, that is something that he just mentioned very articulately, that, you can bring the energy, the natural gas, the electricity. That dark fiber is an asset that you can't overestimate, quite frankly, in terms of your ability to deliver power, because right now, power is probably the number one element when we're looking through and recruiting projects and they start inquiring about a region. 1A, or right at the top with the power, is the water and the wastewater. And that is really the largest struggle that each and every one of our counties have. And, in terms of capacity, the cost of building that, I don't have to tell y'all, I think y'all just went through a budget hearing. I think before this, those things are expensive to build, as Diane said. My plea to you, for lack of a better word, is to understand that you've got what amounts to a truly regional asset sitting out there on that plant. And it's got capacity, as John mentioned, and we talked before this, 50 million gallons a day. And I think we did the math a little bit before, that's like enough for 500,000 people, literally. Okay, now 500,000 people, we're not going to allow that to happen, and it would never happen in Taylor County. But at the end of the day, you've got to combine the public use of what that might be used for, families and employees that relocate here because we're trying to attract industry here. And to have that kind of capacity on the wastewater side of things to be able to recruit industry. And even if this company that Andy keeps talking about, we've been through a number of RFIs, but even if that one company doesn't land here, that might be that 1,800 jobs, the trend in this country is for a lot of reshoring of business. And our region is positioned extremely well to really capitalize on the type of industries that are coming back in. And I know it's hard to envision that over the next 5 years, 3 to 5 years, but sometimes these plants take that long. But if we can demonstrate to a company that we've got an asset that is either under county management or in some private partnership way that you've got access to that 50 million gallons a day, that is an asset that nobody else, quite frankly, probably in this state, and I'm not overestimating that. The water issues they have in South Florida from Ocala South. But certainly in our region in North Florida, that would be something that Diane and I and our team could take on the road and build into all of our marketing about, you just need to come and see the asset here in terms of our ability to deliver the water and the wastewater that you need. Because having power, be it natural gas, be it the electricity, be it that dark fiber, and combine that with an unbelievable potential regional asset the size of what John and Andy were discussing earlier. And I'll be the first to tell you, I'm not a scientific environmental engineer, but I do know how to sell an asset like that. And that's an unbelievable thing that only this county could be on the road selling. And it's as easy as that. I think the environment for recruiting business and industry is only going to get more exciting in our region in particular. And it's not just Andy's property. Andy's got an ideal piece of property out there that we're working all the time. You've got other properties in Taylor County that we can go and they can take advantage of that asset from a wastewater standpoint as well. So it's just something that I'll close by. I just think it's certainly worth looking at whether you decide to go forward with trying to take the eminent domain process forward. It's certainly worth evaluating to at least say to yourself, we've got a great opportunity here. It makes sense. And then the other thing, quite frankly, I think it shows Four Rivers, it shows Georgia Pacific, that by God, you've got assets, you're in our county, and we need to try to work together to get this done, because we don't want that asset to simply be mothballed out there. That would be a travesty for everybody. that an asset that pumps out has the capacity for 50 million gallons of water a day and wastewater, and somehow that just leaves after how long my grandfather and my father worked out at Buckeye, when it was known as Buckeye.
Yeah.
So I've got a little bit of personal history there, but that's got nothing to do with the assets y'all are sitting on. So I'll just close with that. Yes, sir.
Weren't you gonna need the well line to go along with that pipeline?
That's way above my environmental.
Say that
engineering.
again.
Do what?
Say it again?
The well line that they have,
Yeah.
50 million gallons has been coming out of all these years.
Right.
You really need that to go along with the pipeline.
Yes, that's correct, Jim.
Nobody's mentioned it, I want to throw that out there in the circle because
In our discussion with GP, they looked like they were gonna abandon their little water treatment plant and most of the wells out there. And that's, though they have not told Swanee River Water Management District that, to my knowledge. Okay, our last conversation. Now, since y'all were talking about money tonight, how would you go about financing something like this? I mean, you know, everybody's pitching pennies around here and rubbing dimes together. There's actually a funding opportunity available. Diane, would you like to talk a little bit about the emergency bridge loan opportunity?
Most of y'all are familiar with the emergency bridge loan for small businesses, because I know I can tell County help some small companies fill out one. And basically, it was just for small businesses. But recently, I discovered there is a local government emergency bridge loan. And there's about 20 million in that fund. I worked with Dixie County, and they were able to get one of those. It's 10 years, interest-free. It is a loan. But the whole principle is, if you have an asset like that, and you're gonna bring industry in, you have the revenue flow coming to your county so that you can actually pay it back. That's one source. And I know that you probably have talked to some people in Florida Commerce about the disaster recovery assistance, and that would be another source. And I know John has experience doing it for the city of Perry, and they especially are interested when you have a project that's gonna create jobs. And that's the whole principle behind this. You've lost jobs, you've lost revenue. This seems to be, from my perspective, one of the greatest assets you could possibly have. And I believe the state DEP would help you. I think Florida Commerce would help. I think Governor DeSantis would help, because it is that big a deal. And everybody that I have spoken with from the state, they really like the idea. Because why would you just let something that great just sit there and deteriorate? Plug up the wells, shut down the lines, the transmission lines. It just doesn't really make sense. And I think most all of y'all, nobody really wants to go through a condemnation process. But we don't like to have to pay our taxes every year either. It's just something we have to do, and sometimes you have to grin and bear it if it's really gonna overall be for the betterment of your county and city.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
when I first heard the idea, I've been following the North Florida Economic Development for the last 5 years. Every meeting they have, every quarter I'm there. And I hear some good things from other counties. Lake City, Columbia County just went through a process of building, I don't know what it was it $20 million that they got to build a 50 million, or 50,000, or 500,000 wastewater plant, wasn't it?
Yes.
And it cost $20 million. Now, if we got one out there less than 5 miles from here, and it can service, it looked like it's a good idea to me. If we, when Andy and others out there working tonight, and Bob Cates is along with it, if we can get that in the ears of somebody who's looking to come to Taylor County, there's some things we got in place from the county commission that we can help. And God knows, the 700 jobs we lost, some of those people would enjoy being able to come home and work at home. I have 4 kids. They can't work in Taylor County. College educated children, you know, both 2 of them master's degrees. They can't get a job here. But yet I'm sitting on the commission and I hear this word of do nothing, the county commissioner do nothing. When we hear things like this, we don't try to think it through. We don't follow up on it. We won't invest our time in going and listen to hearing what other folks are doing and what other folks like to do. Yeah, when I hear call Mr. Bishop to Philadelphia law, yeah, you know, it sort of sets him up and it sets me up too. Other folks somewhere else is doing something. We don't want it to be like Tampa and Fort Lauderdale or Broward County, but we want it to be a little bit better than what it is. We don't want it to be like Greensville. We're on the edge of looking like Greensville right now. And if we could use that wastewater system out there and not let them put cement in that line going to the river, going to the Gulf, that was $77 million they spent. If we could use that, and then them 9 wells we got out there, I PM them wells when I was working with Procter & Gamble. They would produce. And that asset, I recognize that. A lot of people don't. A lot of people have no idea what we're talking about or even what we're thinking. But if you're thinking about the future of Taylor County and the children that you got here, you have a concern, and I got a burning desire to see Taylor County do exist in years to come.
Well, it says a lot about the commission and the involvement of the city when the state has really tried to help ever since Hurricane Idalia. I mean, they've been over backwards. They've been here thousands of times, haven't they, Wanda?
It seems like it, yeah.
And it's one of those things, they've tried to help you to help yourselves. And to me, this is that opportunity. I can't imagine a better opportunity to really and truly try to help yourselves by at least exploring it. And that's really what we're here tonight to try to get y'all to do, to investigate and explore it. I mean, it's just too important not to try to do something like this.
So we were presented with 2 options. One was to do the eminent domain route, and the other was to join the federal lawsuit. Now, we talked about the eminent domain. Let's talk about joining in on the federal lawsuit. How, Conrad, can you address that?
To be frank, I don't know enough about it, but I don't know that it's something that you really want to do. That's just my opinion because you've asked that. And of course, understand that if y'all decide to go forward, that doesn't mean that you're going to file the lawsuit tomorrow because you're going to notify them that you're going to do that. And who knows, the other side might want to settle with you, you know, when they are given the facts as has been presented to you tonight and more facts. You know, just because like was presented to you, there's a federal lawsuit that if in fact Georgia Pacific is out of it, the lawsuit goes away.
Andy, what about instead of going into a lawsuit and paying attorneys, why couldn't we work with both the companies and get by it outright? You know, instead of when you go to suing and go in federal court or state court, the clause come out first, you know, on both sides.
Oh, I understand.
I mean, have y'all talked to both of them?
No, we're discussing this with Mr. Bishop. Our first order was we had to go to the board. And we had to get you guys to back whatever action that was proposed. That's, and quite frankly, this is one of those situations that only a government entity can do.
If I may, yeah, I said it the same way you just said it. When I said that,
I heard that.
that it could be settled, you know, but you just got to present it to the parties saying, this is what the Board of County Commissioners of Taylor County is contemplating. And we certainly want to work with you, and let's sit down and see if we can't work something out, you know, to the benefit of all concerned. And then we all understand that there's some difficulties on the other side, but, you know, there was a saying that I've used before this board, no guts, no glory. What I mean by that is that if you don't try, you ain't gonna get nowhere. And that's double negative, which my mom always told me not to use. But, so I think what's being presented to you is, and this is a workshop, they're not gonna make a decision tonight, but it's something that you need to think about and discuss with your constituents, which you all do, because you're gonna get some calls on this, I can rest assured of that. And then, if you decide to do that, then I would ask for some help and with getting in touch with various folks, corporations, and the leaders of that, and say, look, this is what my board, my boss has asked me to do. Find out if they want to come to the table, or at least talk to us about that. That would be the start.
Question. People in the county need jobs and people in the city need jobs. Everybody needs jobs. So would it be feasible if the city and the county also joined forces with this? And would it make it that much stronger?
Oh, sure. Oh, sure. And I'm sure that they'll, well, I'm not telling them what they're gonna do, but probably be presented to the city council. Sure, it would be.
Because I would like to see that,
Yeah.
that, you know, that we join forces and work together with this, and because it's gonna be, hopefully it would benefit everybody, city and county.
Let me tell you what I've read today. Chillicothe, Ohio, this plant in Chillicothe, paper mill. 22,000 people signed a petition and sent to headquarters, wanting to know what they're going to do, how can they help them, or what would they leave there to help them while they're gone. You know, we still got 19,000 people in Taylor County to write Georgia Pacific and whoever else involved. Look, you left us here, we're struggling, we need some help. What would you do? You know, we're not too proud to be that child that don't really have anything.
Which you said you would need to be directed, or you would need that to be motioned and voted on for moving forward to speak to these companies?
Oh, absolutely. But you couldn't do it tonight.
No, sir, that's why I say it has to be agenda.
Mr. Chairperson, Bob Hay is on the line and he would like to speak.
Bob?
Hello, can you hear me better than I can hear you?
Yes, sir, we hear you.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate all the conversation, all the various perspectives, and I wanted to offer some thoughts as well. I'll try to stay in my 3-minute time limit. You know, we used to have a phrase at Georgia Pacific that we said, we won't tell you what to think, but we'll tell you what to think about. Let me point out some points of alignment. I certainly think anything that's good for ground collection property is good for Taylor County. Wouldn't want you to also talk to Georgia Pacific, but we haven't also talked about industry. But some things I think we should think about is, first is dioxin. So let's talk about the biosolids that accumulate in the number 2 lagoon. And those travel, the ownership of those travel with permit. So we should be thinking, if we take that from them, especially if they decide to give it away, you need to wonder why would they give it away? And we should be thinking about that. If you noted, I didn't hear it said correctly, but their groundwater monitoring plan has been deemed inadequate. They actually had to expand their groundwater monitoring plan as Florida DEP is requiring now. Because they want to make sure that groundwater is contained under that bill with that minimal flow before they said that. Two of those wastewater treatment ponds leaked when they were first built. One had to be closed and one had to be relined twice. And so one of those things we should think about is, if we decide we want to own that, how does that go? Because we'll own those things as well. When we think about staffing, one thing we should think about is that's run around the clock. If you think about the city of Gary, they run just 2 people, morning shift and evening shift. This runs around the clock, and it also requires a couple of maintenance people, mechanic, electrical, and instrumentation. You know, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. That's what you do when you own a big wastewater treatment plant. I'll keep the thought separate of wastewater treatment plant from pipeline. They're really 2 entirely separate entities. I think the pipeline would be a great asset for Taylor County. First of all, you can shut it down and not use it when you want to start using it. It's there. Secondly, if you tie into it all up and down it paths to the highway, so we could have industry for years to come with their own effluent treatment, if they had it, depending what their mill was and their needs were. And they could be discharging into the same pipeline in multiple places. So I think the pipeline is hugely important. Wastewater treatment is a little bit different. It's designed for the effluent it's designed to treat. So a whole mill effluent wastewater treatment system might be different than a municipal. I think one of the things we should think about is the very fact that we spent 2 years running pilot plant trials before we built it, so we made sure the design would actually successfully treat whole mill effluent, which it did and it does. I don't know what the cost of that is. I understand conversations with GP have been held and they're going to come up with a price. But I know one thing from watching the legal side of Georgia Pacific, if you get into a drawn-out, protracted lawsuit battle with them, we can laugh about billionaires, but I have seen them go toe-to-toe for years to keep something from happening or to make something happen. To make sure if we swallow that, we're ready to take on that. Again, I'm not saying any of these aren't good. I was thinking about eminent domain. I get a little nervous, and we all do. Everybody prefaces their thoughts with that makes them nervous, but it's been done. But the example it's been done is like, we're building a shopping center. We bought 50 acres and we need 4 more. We're going to take those 4 because that person won't play ball. A little bit different when we say this. This wastewater treatment system, they said all along they weren't demolishing it, they were idling it. And we've said all along that's one of the things that makes this site so desirable. So when it's cleaned up, remediated, and goes on the market for sale, it comes from a well line. It comes from the wastewater treatment plant. And those are positives. And we wrestle those away from the 2,100 acre site. We have to think about just what we think about. I'm not saying I know the answer, but we have to think about what are we doing for that site and its long-term value. We talked about that the asset, if idle wastewater treatment plant, if idle will degrade. That is absolutely correct. It's just like shutting a ball mill down. If you leave it alone for 2 years, or if you park your Ford Mustang in your garage and don't drive it for 2 years, you're going to have problems to get ready to. So that's going to happen with Taylor County or the site. If we say we're going to take it, well, we pump all of it too. We're only running rainwater through it, stormwater, well water. We won't really be using all the recirculation systems and valve condensate pumps and all of that. And so both these are cooling towers, for example. But it will be I don't really see, at least what I'd be thinking about it, if Taylor County owns it, what's different than that thing with the site in terms of if it gets mothballed or when it gets used, what has to be done? So these are just a few thoughts that I have. And then I would share one more thought from my own background, and I looked this up after I heard this was all coming to the commissioners. I was the global environmental manager for a company before I joined Buckeye. It was called Howard, and worked with a company called Abitibi, still in Grand Falls, Newfoundland. And because it couldn't sell enough newsprint on the island of Newfoundland, we shipped to Europe. You can imagine as the newsprint market declined, we had to shut that mill down. We made a decision to shut it down. We shut the mill down. We shut 3 hydroelectric dams down to supply power to the mill. We had our land. And so the project of Newfoundland thought that, they could run this asset, so they took it, they passed legislation, and they, I guess the U.S. will call it eminent domain, but they just passed legislation and took it. And then they learned they had taken $600 million in environmental liabilities unintentionally. That was theirs. And they wanted to give those back to my company at that time. Well, let's do the Canadian Supreme Court and ruling was you can't separate the permit responsibility from the permit itself. So I would really reiterate, we want to think through, GP owns that liability today. They have a required remediation plan today. They have to do that groundwater monitoring to find out what the problems are today. And I would just ask that our county be very circumspect as we think about taking on that responsibility and would really need to know clearly what that was. But again, I'm completely aligned with Jeff and Diane. We're trying to work hard. We're trying to work together to get into Taylor County. It would be nice if we had some kind of industrial park with wastewater treatment. But think about it, the right business comes to that site, they're going to have that. That's going to be your industrial, your potential industrial park. If they come to Grant's Legacy and they're light on their effluent treatment, they go right into the city wastewater treatment. So anyway, I appreciate your time and appreciate you giving me a chance to share some of my thoughts with you. So I can be there in person tonight.
Thank you, Bob.
Well, those are all good points, and all that deserves a lot of consideration. This is why I'm just asking for the easement to secure the pipeline. Let's take these things one step at a time, but let's take, timing is everything on this easement issue as a pipeline. Certainly with the federal court case going on, they might be forced to dig that pipeline up and abandon it. And we don't want to see that asset disappear. Commissioners, thank you for letting me present tonight. If you have any additional questions, I'll be glad to take them either back at another meeting, or you talk to me offline and I'll give you a call. I'll be glad to discuss anything, including more detail about the confidential nature of some of these problems.
Andy, if you ask, have y'all even mentioned that to either one of the landowners? Nobody had.
Now this is Mr. Bishop's directions where we needed to come to the board.
Okay, I got it.
Any questions?
Mr. Andy, sorry, I have one more question, just general question, and maybe Mr. Bob can help.
Sure.
As far as the current permitting for that pipeline, or the wastewater treatment plant, or both, is it, I don't want to use the word limited, but for the next user, they could not have a heavier use for that plant or for the pipeline, correct?
I do not know. That's not my expertise. I do know from talking to the Water Management District that the next users permits will be evaluated on their use. And they just haven't done that yet because they don't know what GP's plans are. And so they're still permitting us for that 35 or 36 million gallons per day.
Bob, do you know the answer to that? Do you understand what I'm trying to ask?
Wanda, I understood you to say, if a heavier user came, could it be used in that pipeline or in that wastewater treatment plant?
Yes, sir.
You'll have to be permitted.
So, okay,
Yeah. Look at what is
for
permitted.
a different use,
now.
right.
There's a lot of capacity there. Some of these projects we've seen, while they far exceed, some of them far exceed the capacity we have in the city of Perry, none of them come close to that capacity for that wastewater.
I wasn't thinking about the capacity I know is important, but the type of effluent was the question I had. If it was a heavier, a different type of effluent, would there be a challenge as far as permitting?
Depends on the effluent, depends on the pre-treatment and what kind of process they put in place. You know, and if, you know, if discussions go well and there's an opportunity to look deeper into that plant, quite frankly, as an engineer, I'd like to go see exactly what's out there and what the capabilities are, and look at the maintenance records and the design, the documentation. And let's see what we got to work with. Bring in a wastewater treatment engineer that's specialist, and let's have some conversations about what we're getting into. We know about the environmental issues.
Right.
Y'all have done a good job in making sure those have been recognized.
Any other questions? Let's move on to item 4. Scott,
Let me say this, I thank y'all for coming. It helps me, it helps my feelings too. Someone asked, what are y'all doing? What are the possibilities? What about Buckeye and all this? You know, hey, we have looked, we have talked with folks, but we don't have an answer yet. But I'm pretty sure on down the line, we will have an answer. But I appreciate all of you taking time out of your schedule and coming to this commission and talking to us. It is the largest employer we had in the county. It's gone. And it's one of the most, from what I can understand, it's one of the most desirable places to use and replace that with another large industry or several industries to replace it. By using wastewater discharge and getting fresh water into that plant. Or a plant around the city somewhere.
Okay. Move on to item 4. Mr. Scott Coons, Executive Director, North Central Florida Planning Council, to discuss Central County Comprehensive Plan.
Yeah, I'll get back to you.
Being Chair of this board, I'm Scott Coons, and I have the honor and privilege of serving as the Executive Director for the North Central Florida Regional Planning Council. We're an association of local governments covering 12 counties and 40 municipalities in North Florida. Cameron County and the City of Perry are both members. Commissioner Dempsey is your representative on our board. Councilman Landry from the City of Perry is their representative. We're involved in a lot of different activities related to community economic development across North Florida. We have a strategic regional policy plan to guide growth and development in the area. We work with local first responders on hazardous material training. We are an economic development district and do economic development planning. We also are there in transportation and work with most of our counties on the state transportation disadvantage program. And we also provide local technical services to cities and counties for community development and comprehensive planning. We do that here in Taylor County. We serve kind of as a team behind the team to help build local capacity here with your local staff. One asked me if I could come this evening and give you an overview of your comprehensive plan and land development code and answer any questions you might have about the processes related to making the changes to have additional opportunities for industrial and economic development here in the county. Let's see. So I'm going to talk about what is planning, how do we do it, your comprehensive plan, the future land use map, the amendment process, briefly about your land development code and how to amend it, and then a brief summary. So what is planning? Planning is simply an organized way of shaping how a community grows and develops. The planning process is a basic 4-step process. Where are we? We look at data analysis, our current conditions, what is your existing land use, how is the land being used, what are the employers, what are the environmental characteristics of the area. Second, where do we want to go? That's your comprehensive plan. We'll talk more about in a minute. How do we get there? We implement that through your land development code. And then how do we do, and a look back every 7 years to evaluate the comprehensive plan. So why do we do this? We do it to help ensure compact, orderly growth and development in the county through the efficient use of infrastructure and services, and efficient use of limited revenue and resources and financial resources you have, as well as to protect the natural resources of the area And last, you have to do it because the state requires you to under state law. Every county and city in the state is required to have a comprehensive plan under chapter 163. So the plan itself is a blueprint for how growth and development will occur in the community. It's a policy document that covers growth and development. It sets principles, guidelines, standards, and strategies for future growth, establishes land use categories, and is made up of chapters which refer to as elements. These goals, objectives, and policies for future growth. Goals are desired future outcomes for the community. Objectives are measurable activities to be accomplished to meet those goals, and policies are specific steps or strategies of how to get there. Under Florida statute, your comprehensive plan has to have certain elements of the chapters, future land use, transportation, housing, commonly referred to as infrastructure, sanitary sewer, solid waste, drainage, potable water, and groundwater recharge, conservation of natural resources, recreational open space, coordination, how to get along with your neighbors, capital improvements element, here in Taylor County, a coastal management element because you're on the coast, public school facility element, and most recent, a few years ago, was added a property rights element. So the future land use map is the way that the community decides how land will be utilized both today and in the future. The map designates future general distribution location of various types of land uses. Your future land use map has 12 land use categories: conservation, public, 2 agricultural classifications, actually 3, a couple of mixed use districts, a special Sweetwater resort community, aviation for the airport, water-oriented commercial along the coast, and industrial. This is your future land use map, treating those areas as they are throughout the county. Of course, your plan only incorporated the county. City area has their own plan to guide their future growth and development. So we looked at your future land use map and the various categories and how much land area is designated for each of those. As you imagine, it being primarily timberland here, the most common is agriculture 2, almost 400,000 acres. The first 4 agricultural 2, 1 agricultural, rural, residential, and conservation comprise over 95% land area in the appropriate area of the county. As you know, the state of Florida owns much of the coastal salt marsh along the coast. And industrial land is about 4,000 acres. That's quite a bit of industrial land. Because you are such a large geographic county, it's only about 0.6% of the total classifications. And you do have 665,000 acres, over 1,000 square miles. Taylor County is the 11th largest county in the state in terms of geographic land area among the 67 counties. This next map does depict those vertical hashed black areas, gray areas, are the industrial classified lands in the county. Obviously, the largest is the item you've just been discussing earlier, the former Georgia Pacific site, as well as down to the southwest there in Ammo, as well as other industrial uses along the north side of the airport. There's one out west, address 98, which is actually county-owned property, and a couple north of the city. The plan also includes several overlays from the Vision 2060 process that you went through a few years ago. There are also 12 overlay districts. Only 6 of those are currently being used, and they add additional policies and direction for development in those particular areas. So if you want to change the plan, if you want to provide more industrial areas, how would you go about doing that? The plan can be amended to add, delete, or modify the text, goals, and policies in the plan, as well as change the designation of property through a map amendment. There are 2 types of amendments. The first is small scale. This would involve land 50 acres or less. Text amendments related to a 50 acre or less amendment can also be done through small scale. And that's entirely a local matter. There's no state review of small scale amendments. That process is a public hearing before your plan board. It serves as your local planning agency. You make a recommendation to this board. You only have 1 public hearing and 1 reading of the ordinance to take final action, and the land use is changed. It's about a 60-day process to accomplish that. Second type is large scale. This is greater than 50 acres. However, if it is for job creation, economic development project that would further the economic development objectives of the executive order designating North Florida as an area of rural area opportunity, It can be up to 100 acres for economic development sites. We went through this process a few months ago for an ambulance expansion. That was over 100 acres, so it had to go through a more extended review process, as well as any text amendment is considered to be large scale. So in the large scale process, you get started with a public hearing before the planning board, and a recommendation to Board of County Commissioners. The Board of County Commissioners holds a transmittal hearing for a first public hearing, and in this case, counties usually only have one reading of an ordinance, but in this particular case, for certain comprehensive plan amendments, there are 2 readings of the ordinance. Then you decide whether to transmit that to the state planning agency, which is now the state Florida Department of Commerce. You have to do that within 10 days after the public hearing for working days. And then there are 2 subsets to the large scale process. There's the expedited process, which was added back in 2011 when the state planning laws were substantially amended. Provides for reviewing agencies to only comment on state or regional resources and facilities, and they must do that in 30 days. And the county has additional 180 days or 6 months to review those comments, have a second public hearing, and consider whether to adopt the amendment or to modify it. After the adoption hearing is sent back to the state, and if no one files an appeal within 31 days, it automatically becomes effective. There's no formal state thumbs up, thumbs down on large scale expedited amendments. And that's the process that the NAMA amendment went through. Second large scale process is called coordinated state review. This is a little more involved. At the end of that process, the state land planning agency, the Department of Commerce, gets to decide whether what you adopted is in compliance or not in compliance with the state planning statutes and the state comprehensive plan. If a large scale amendment is found to be not in compliance, then that goes to an administrative hearing, where a recommended order is issued by the administrative law judge back to the Department of Commerce. They issue that final order. That final order can be appealed to the State Land and Water Adjudicatory Commission, which is the state cabinet wearing that hat, serving that function. So your land development code then is the implementing tool to carry out the comprehensive plan. It regulates the use of land, density, intensity, landscaping, buffer, parking, setbacks, and so forth. Also regulates the subdivision of land. And this evening, parenthetically, Senate Bill 784 was just passed by the 25 legislature during the session. This is a major change. As of July 1, subdivision plats can no longer be approved by the governing body. They must be approved administratively. The county must by ordinance designate the office that will be responsible for reviewing and approving plats. The thinking is it's primarily administrative, ministerial function, because the land is already designated for residential development or commercial industrial development. And the planning process is just the formal process dividing up the land, recording the plats in the clerk's office, and does not require public hearings, and it's not a discretionary decision of this board. It meets all the requirements. It's required in chapter 177 for planning. You're required to approve it. This is intended to expedite the process of getting land divided and ready for development. So this is a big, big change in the state of Florida for all counties and cities. And we will help you work with your staff to prepare the necessary amendments to your land development code. So the land development code can be amended to add, delete, or modify text, which we'll be doing late at the subdivision process. That also then starts with a public hearing for the planning board. They make a recommendation to the county commission. County commission, again, at the county level, only has one public hearing to review the ordinance. However, if it involves permitted principal or conditional uses, then you have to have 2 public hearings. So it's amendment related to planning. It's just the process of planning land. It's not going to change areas that can be used for residential, commercial, industrial. So that will work one public hearing. Land development code is entirely a local matter. There is no state review at any time of any kind related to implementing the comprehensive plan for your land development code. That's strictly local orders with the plan board. This will make final decisions. So the summary review the comprehensive plan, which is your general guide for growth and development of the area. It's a process for amending the text, amending the future land use map for the different types of land classifications, as well as the land development code now to amend it. That concludes my brief overview and presentation of your comprehensive plan, amending process, and land development code. We'll be happy to answer any questions.
Bishop, go ahead.
Mr. Attorney, Been a long time, Scott.
Yes, sir.
We've known each other
Good to
for
see you.
many, many years.
Way back. I knew Conrad, he was a young lawyer. I was a young lawyer too.
And I always tell my clients, there's no stupid question, it's stupid not to ask it. But tell me if it's stupid and I'll quit. With regard to the, over the years, with our engineer, I've reviewed subdivision plats, also reviewed, our, land development code with regard to the size of roads, whether the subdivision is going to, years ago, the roads didn't need to be paved years and years ago, and now they need to be paved. Now, has that been taken away from the board now that 784 has been implemented, or do we need to just wait and see?
It has not been taken away from the board in that the board establishes those standards. How wide the road has to be for a new road.
Okay.
The commission has to have, what kind of drainage, of course, water management district gets involved in that. Those are policy decisions that are in the code.
Okay.
The process of planning land is, again, it's going to be administrative. Checklist is meet the requirements. It's approved, signed, and recorded at the clerk's office. Now, the other thing is, process is going to be much quicker. The law specifies local government only has 7 days.
I saw that.
I know, that's ambitious. 7 days to review a plat and determine whether it's complete and meets the requirements in state statute and your code. That's an extremely short period of time, because that's not the only thing your staff has to do every week.
Mr. Scott, is that just the?
Here's again, it's gonna fall,
Is
yes.
this the actual final plat portion of the review, or is that from actual application before, with the preliminary plat?
You'll be with the preliminary plat to determine whether it's complete, not whether it's approved and signed off, or whether it's complete.
So it's an administrative action to determine the preliminary plat is complete, not the boards, not even the planning boards, it's just,
Correct.
it's administrative.
7 days.
And
then.
that's fine.
Go ahead.
And so that's fine to determine completeness within 7 days. I think we have a 10-day obligation right now to give a response back. Subsequent to that, like Conrad was alluding to, some developments, especially within mixed-use urban land use classifications, require improved roadways. Obviously, that requires construction plans, environmental resource permits. That can't happen quite as expeditiously as that 7 days, and I don't think that I saw anywhere in the 784 that it put that onus on us to have it done that fast. It seemed to be more focused on the final plat aspect as being in conformance with 177 so that it doesn't go back through this board, administratively review it, we check it for consistency, and then it's just approved and recorded.
Correct. Everything your county just stated is correct. If there's anything, chapter 177, that discusses construction plans. It is only related to the planning process and recording it. It's only a 5-page statute, it's not very long. It basically strikes through governing body and says administrative official in terms of approving plats and recording. It doesn't address, before you get to all that final plat, you're going to go through construction plans, those are going to be reviewed, should meet all the standards.
So what we would customarily do is our construction plans are usually presented to the Board of County Commissioners as part of the overall final plat approval process. We typically would do it as a contingency. Will we handle that aspect of it administratively as well?
That's a very good question, because the statute is silent. So
Have you put together a proposed amendment to a similar code that you're going to send to us to see if we like it or not?
yes, we're in the process of doing it. We have kind of a first rough cut of that. But yeah, we'll provide that, and then we'll provide it to you and provide comments. We can tweak it, revise it, whatever fits your process, as long as it's consistent with statute and Conrad signs off on it, says it's good to go. But we'll be through the process. And the other thing is, it says effective July 1. It doesn't give you 90 days, 6 months, a year to get all this in place. It says it's effective July 1. So if somebody walks up tomorrow with a preliminary plat,
So you just walked in.
I don't know how you deal with that, Conrad. It's kind of a gray zone.
So somebody did just walk in like a week ago. And our typical process is we reviewed it as the TRC, and then we forwarded it to the planning board because of the concept part.
Right.
Once it hits that preliminary plat approval, My guess is somewhere we've designated now what entity is the administrative portion that's going to review it internally. And then we'll follow the Senate bill path from that point, I guess.
That's all you can do. So, but it says it's effective July 1.
So that we don't have to have our code changed before we do that.
That was going to be my
Right,
question.
at a minimum, the amendment says 177 says that the county in this case has to either by resolution or ordinance designate the administrative entity that will have final approval and signature authority on the plat. So maybe it's a two-step process. Again, we're still trying to sort all this out because it just happened. We're on a webinar today, there was some discussion about it, a lot more questions and answers. Maybe kind of the first step would be to simply have the board adopt a resolution designating county engineer, building official, someone, or their designee to be the individual that would sign off on the final plat. At least have that in place, but you go through the several month process of making the vote.
So is the BOCC chair's name not going to be on the plat anymore?
Correct.
That's removed, but the clerk will still attest to the administrative signature?
Probably so, but the chair's signature will no longer be on the plat because it will not be approved by the governing board.
Mr. Scott, do you think that the local planning board would be considered an administrative function, or does this?
No.
Oh.
They're a lay body appointed by this board.
So Conrad, we'll have to look at that ordinance.
Yeah.
I couldn't hear what you said.
We'll have to
She
look
was-
at our
She was
ordinance.
asking the planning board to be the designated entity.
An administrative agent.
Our thoughts is probably not, because the statute's pretty clear that it needs to be ministerial, doesn't go to public hearing, doesn't go to public meeting, just approved by staff.
So it's all
Well, you know, what
internal.
happens in a lot of the smaller communities, to it, one of my clients is, you don't have enough people that will get on the local planning board. And what happens is the town council ends up being the local planning board, and then when you have the public hearing, you know, before the local planning board, they recommend to themselves the amendment. For like,
Different hat, right? They go to staff,
yeah,
they go to staff.
yeah, and people in the audience don't know, what are you doing, Conrad? I said, well, we don't have enough people that will come on board. Or if we get enough people to come on board, they don't come to the meetings. You know, it's, because they're not getting paid, and I can understand that, everybody's busy. So those are things that of course, our legislators, unless they've been a county commissioner or been a town council member, they're not educated with regard to that little problem there. But again, what they're doing is they're putting a lot more decisions on staff if staff is part of the administrative entity.
Not so much. I mean, we, as technical staff, we were promulgating a recommendation every time anyway. So we gave you our recommendation and did the review, so I would mark it up. It would go back and forth, and we finally say, okay, BOCC, it is ready for you guys to sign this. So I think we're having to do the same level of review. It's just removing the secondary administrative effect of the BOCC endorsing it.
I agree to an extent. Sound like a lawyer.
Sometimes.
It depends.
Yeah.
I will say, if you, maybe picking up on that same concept that Conrad was suggesting of kind of focusing more on staff versus the planning board aspect of it. You know very well that we have a TRC, a technical review committee here, and, applications are received by the planning director. Those are distributed amongst TRC. We review it, and then we, in turn, make a recommendation or a decision to a lay body of planning board members. And then they render a decision or a recommendation depending on what the subject matter may be. Some instances, that's a final decision that's being held. Is there other maybe locations, or do you see any added benefits similar to this Senate bill on doing the same with respect to development applications, to where you have an employed, technically competent TRC that is reviewing these things and going through that effort, arriving at a code compliant consideration, maybe that's enough. And where that, if a decision is rendered to that applicant and they feel so inclined to disagree with it, then that decision then could be appealed to the Board of County Commissioners, obviously being the higher authority.
Yes, I agree with that. Yeah, the site plan review for a commercial development or industrial development is largely a ministerial process to see if what's being proposed for that site, use has already been determined by this board. So this location is where we want commercial. Somebody comes in with a site plan to the county building department, the county engineer's office. They review it to see does it comply with the code as you've already established in the standards. Is the parking there? Is this setback there? Is there a square buffer? Again, it's more of a technical process. And in some communities, that is done by staff entirely. It's a ministerial function because policy decisions always been made. Sometimes it's awkward when you bring those things to even the lay board or plan board may make the final decision, or this, the public's there, it's a public meeting, they gotta make comments, I don't like this. Well, that's not what's being discussed tonight, whether you like it or not. It's whether it does meet our code, the use is already permitted. And it implies that there's some kind of discretion before the board. The board doesn't have discretion. So some jurisdictions just can take that out of the picture because you can't change a decision. Doesn't meet the code, it's approved, go get your building permit and do it. That's something you want to consider. Maybe not right doing the plat process, but after that, take a look at that. You can kind of keep the plat process change for Senate Bill 784 clean, or if you want to, you roll it all in the same thing.
Yeah, go ahead and bite the apple.
So it's up to y'all. We'll help you do it either way, how you do it.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for Scott?
I do have a quick question. I think, Mr. Scott, some of the biggest issues that we face with our community is that, we are a very large county. We have a large amount of, say, for instance, agricultural zone, land use category.
You have a lot of trees.
Yes, sir. But we also have a lot of people who come here and purchase property. They don't understand that maybe that particular parcel isn't eligible for a building permit, and we've seen it over and over and over and over again. And where we end up with some of our people, whom of course this board wants to help, is trying to get past, okay, well, our code says this. How do we, what is the best process as far as trying to help our people?
Due diligence, do your homework, buyer beware, but most cases that doesn't happen. Somebody buys a piece of property,
Right.
in the building department, and want to do something that's not permitted by your code. With counties across North Florida, we work with them to try to get to yes, to try to figure out how it can happen, but in some cases, it's just not possible. It's an unfortunate situation where they sold a piece of property or applied they can do something with it, or somebody told them that they can do something.
Right.
They didn't come to the county building department, county engineer to find out what they could before they went to closing and reached the property. But yeah, in many cases, we'll work to try to figure out, get a square peg in a round hole, make it work, but many times, unfortunately, it's just not possible. Short of amending the code, changing the requirements in the land development code, or changing land use designation on the map. That's the
And
ultimate.
that's basically
Right.
spot zoning, which generally isn't.
It's frowned upon, generally, by courts, with challenging.
Right.
Or to change
Perhaps.
the text, language, and the code of what's required where, under what classifications.
But you wouldn't do that for just one parcel.
No, we apply to everybody, that is simply its own property,
Right.
or some designated property.
And I think that's what, we've had some people with real hardships because they either, there was a lot split made that wasn't, there wasn't due diligence. They did, recorded a lot split and the property's already been, split too many times. And they're just really left with nowhere to turn, and it's not something the staff can do to change. And so they appeal to the board, but then the board can't.
Their hands are largely tied too, unfortunately. Except when I say we try to get TS, most of those cases, how we get TS is, let's look at the code and change the regulation, change the requirement. Is there some language we can change in order for this to happen here? But yet, keep in mind, it's just not for Mr. Smith, it's for Mrs. Jones and everybody else that has the same land use classification on their property. Applies universally countywide.
Right.
But the scenario she's painting there also has statutory relations.
Or,
It also has statutory relations with respect to 177. So once you hit that third parcel,
It's division of property,
Right.
right, then
it's
that's,
not a local level concern, it becomes a state level concern.
or selling landlocked property without legal access to it.
Well, I mean, this board addressed that back in 06 or 11, one of the two, there's two important ordinances requiring real property connection and a minimum frontage width. So, I mean, they were pretty smart about that.
Well, and that's caused some hardship for folks, especially if their family owns property and they have already divided the property and their dream is that their family all live on this property, but maybe only one of the lots has road frontage, has access. So then the other three are, it's just insurmountable.
Right.
So
There is.
What do we do with that? Because I've got people in my district that fit this situation. They've moved, they've sold everything they had and worked with a realtor, and we're not told of any problems. And so after they've sold everything they have, then they get here and they're ready to build, and they find out they can't. And, just because I just don't agree with, the way it is if property has been divided, twice? And then that's it, you can't do anything else. And no matter if it's somebody that's moved here, if it's part of your family, I do not agree with this code or.
There is a safety valve for family lots. Family lots are exempt from the minimum land area. In agriculture 1, it's 20 acres, agriculture 2 is 10 acres, agriculture or residential is 5 acres. So when to carve off an acre for their son or daughter, they can do that, but it does not negate state planning law. If you do it a second time, then it becomes a subdivision. But they don't have to meet the minimum area lot size for family members.
But they have to have,
That is kind of a safety
they have to
valve.
have access.
Yes, they have to have access.
Right, and that's where.
Legal access, because someday, somebody else is gonna own that property.
Right. And we don't,
And, sorry, go ahead.
well, then you get into the whole question about easements.
Right, and then, but also, the sheriff, fire department, emergency medical, school bus, they all need access to it.
So just to make it clear, there is a process for dividing property, but it's a subdivision process. So what folks have to do, if they wish to divide property, depending on where it is, if they wish to divide property more than twice, then on that third division, they have to go through our code, our ordinance. It's in our code, they have to go through the subdivision process, a formal process.
It's the third parcel, not the third division.
I'm sorry,
So
the
you
third.
divide it once, you can divide a parent parcel once to create two,
Right.
outside of the immediate family provision that he was referencing there, which is in our comp plan. Once you hit that second division, which creates your third parcel, then you fall under the subdivision statutes.
And the other kind of safety valve, do you have a minor subdivision on an existing road, you write the final plat?
Yes, sir. We have it is actually, you have an exemption for 15 acres or more, as long as they front a county road or an existing private road as of the date of that ordinance. And I think that one is the 2006, maybe -14, I think is the ordinance. So as of that day, if it was in existence then, you have vested right to access an easement that existed then, or a private road that existed then, or a county road that existed then. Absent that, you have to have a county road going forward for that 15 acre or more exemption clause. That you are allowed up to have 8 divisions or 8 parcels, excuse me, off of an existing county road.
You read the final plat, because no construction plans.
There is no plat.
Yep.
No plat requirement, because you would have frontage and there wouldn't be infrastructure necessary.
Right, but you're still dividing the lots, you need to record them.
It is a lot split, but it's not a plat. Nope, it's actually exempt from our platting requirements.
Ken and I talk about this after the meeting.
It's
kind of a gray area.
2020.
Yeah, because it's to help small situation, we have 5, 6, 7, up to 8 lots on an existing county road. There's no infrastructure, no new road being constructed, so no construction plans. You don't have to go through a concept plan, preliminary plat. You just go directly to the final plat or record it clerk's office. If you're saying, you know, you can record a plat.
No, it's,
But you have 177.
Conrad, can look at this, that we don't have a plat obligation when it is, it's actually, paragraph A of that section says that you are exempt from this division.
It was a heck of an ordinance.
Harris.
It was attempted to help people too.
Oh, there was a huge ordeal about that.
It was, you know, I mean, their predecessors worked hard on that.
What is the Barton Harris Act or something?
Bert Harris.
Bert Harris, and it was trying to establish that we weren't, because of the way the rules were, they wanted to establish that we weren't establishing a taking. So the board at that time adopted up to those 8 parcels, 15 acres or larger on existing access ways. It went, Farm Bureau was part of it, and
Send him a copy of that.
sure.
Mr. Chair, I want to ask this gentleman here, aren't you here because this affects you? No? Okay. Sorry, I thought there was somebody else then.
Any other questions for Mr. Scott?
Thank you for the invitation, and as always, look forward to working with you and we'll work with your staff to get you in compliance with the new planning process in your state. So anything else you need accomplished, your comprehensive plan, land development code.
Very good. Thank you.
It's so good to see you. Be careful on the way home.
Yes, sir.
All right, if there's nothing else, we will meet adjourned.
Line muted.
You gonna do?
Yeah, I'm okay. How are you?
I'm still over here. I'm good.
You're good.
Yes, sir.
Good.
Come on.